You know what? Cut that out. This is gonna be a controversial one, but I'm excited. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm gonna go into hypothalamic amenorrhea, my story, why I don't completely agree with the all-in journey. If you've heard of hypothalamic amenorrhea, you've probably heard of the book No Period Now What, which goes into the concept of going all in, which in summary means you have to eat 2,500 calories minimum, quit exercising, and reduce stress levels, which let's freaking get into it. If you're new here, hi, I'm Haley. I had disordered eating for freaking like 5 years, didn't have a period for 4 of them, and I first came across the term all in. I did go all in, by the way. So I quit exercising. I had a minimum of 2,500 calories a day, and what happened to my body was absolutely shocking. It did get really inflamed. Not gonna lie. I was so uncomfortable, not gonna lie. However, there is something to say about doing the body image work and mindset work to heal your relationship with your body along this whole journey. I don't disagree with that. However, the extreme of going from the most active, leanest I have ever been to the biggest, least active I've ever been was not necessary at all. So, and it's also not something that I take my clients through just because it is super extreme, and the 10 reasons why I'm going to get into in just a minute. But the main thing just being that one extreme to the next is something that I just wholeheartedly don't believe in doing. The first reason why I disagree with it is because quitting movement altogether it's completely overkill. Movement is good for you. For myself, it was a form of like therapy. I felt really good after exercising, and that's not to say that I didn't take it to extremes, because I did, and you shouldn't be doing that. However, incorporating some sort of movement, strength training while you're on this weight gain and metabolic healing journey is a very good idea, not only from a hormonal standpoint, but also from a mental health standpoint. And what a lot of women don't know is exercise is not actually your enemy, it's the energy deficit that's your enemy. So you've been under fueling for an extended period of time now while maybe over exercising, but exercise as a singular activity is not the enemy, it's not the villain, it's the energy deficit that you have to close. And as a blanket statement, going all in makes a lot of sense. You know, close the energy gap by reducing the calorie output and increasing the calorie input. However, if you want to be a little bit more strategic, there is definitely different ways in order to close that energy deficit without quitting exercise. Numero dos. Going all in often ignores the metabolic adaptation part of it. So for myself, coming from a background of restricting pretty heavily and then going into like 3,000 calories a day. So I was like 1,000, 1,200, 1,600 calories to 3,000. The amount of fat mass that I did gain was quite a substantial amount. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or it wasn't necessary. My body did need more fat on it. However, the way that I went about it, I definitely would have done differently had I gone through it a second time. And that is exactly why I don't go the all-in approach with my clients, because I do recognize that going from the leanest to the heaviest, fluffiest, most inflamed is a very big mind F, if you know what I mean. And if you've been through this journey or currently on this journey, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, that's the biggest fear. That was the biggest thing holding me back, was just the fact that I had to essentially throw away all of my hard-earned progress, which isn't true. It's a limiting belief and a story that you have in your brain. However, like I said, one extreme to the next is just something that I don't believe in any capacity. And if you don't know what metabolic adaptation is, I do have a full video on it, but just as a summary, when you do reduce your calories quite substantially, your body adapts to that, right? It's just here to survive. That's the only thing it's here to do, right? Survive and reproduce. So in order to conserve energy, it regulates your metabolism, down-regulates other systems in your body like digestion, your menstrual cycle, which is why it's missing, to conserve energy and hoard it for more essential processes like keeping your heart beating, keeping your lungs breathing, and things like that. So when you go from metabolically damaged, essentially, or a lower metabolic rate to completely the other side of eating like 25 plus 100 calories, your body doesn't have time to slowly adapt to that amount. It just goes all the way to the other end, and the amount of fat mass is bigger extent than if you were to take it gradual. 3, psychological stress matters just as much as physical stress. So like I mentioned before, exercise was an outlet for me to kind of decompress. It gave me endorphins. Like, it is a really healthy thing for you to do, and you should incorporate it into your daily routine. And what I don't understand is for the all-in approach, I know that it's a temporary thing to go through. However, what I've found with clients is when they do stop and get their cycle back, they are very terrified of getting it back into any kind of exercise, which I don't think should happen. You should learn along the way how to incorporate exercise in a healthy amount, not taking it to an extreme, so you have that longevity and you know how to exercise without losing your cycle again. So prepping you for success later on in life, not just having this like blanket thing that's supposed to work for everyone when it doesn't really, right? Numero 4, excessive weight gain is not the best way to approach recovering. This notion that it's solely about weight needs to go. There's different factors that play into your hormonal health and whether or not you have a period. I've lost my period at a higher weight than I lost it before. So it's got really very minimal amount to do with your body fat and your weight. Obviously that does play a role. Women need more body fat than men do. I'm not going to discredit that. However, the energy deficit is a far better indicator of whether or not you are going to have a period or not, because your body as a woman is very sensitive to the calorie intake, calorie output, and just from a survival standpoint, right? If your body is too stressed to have a baby and like say there's a famine, it's not going to put the added stress of a potential pregnancy on you right now if it perceives your surroundings and your environment as stressful. So it makes sense that it would stop reproductive system and baby would not be made. Number 5. Any food, anytime is not a sustainable approach to this, because I had developed binge eating. Yep, a lot of people do as well when you go through the all-in journey. Shocker. Why? Because you don't know how to incorporate fear foods without it damaging your mindset towards food again. What I see a lot of is if you've had disordered eating patterns, it can just morph into other kinds of disordered eating patterns. So if you don't actually get to the root, get to the source of your relationship with food, that is just going to turn into a binge, and it's going to be hard to get out of that hole, to dig yourself out of that hole too. So I'm not a very big advocate for anything, anytime. Doesn't matter if you're hungry. If you think about food one time, then you go and eat. Like, I could be watching a commercial, but if that were the case, I would be on my phone and I'd see a burger and be like, I could have a burger. And then I'd go drive and get a burger. Like, how ridiculous. I'm sorry. That is so ridiculous. That's not to say that you shouldn't incorporate fear foods if your fear food is a burger. Highly suggest incorporating that in moderation and finding ways to lower your stress levels, lower the urgency towards these foods, because typically it's the guilt that we attach towards this, or the guilt that we attach towards ourselves after eating said food. And that's what we have to work through, not necessarily eating anything and everything all at once all the time. Numero 6. Athletic women need a different approach to period recovery. Some of you guys don't have the option to get out, to stop exercising. Some of you are athletes. And that's not to say you shouldn't have a good way of getting your cycle back or even getting it in the first place. You shouldn't just discredit, oh, I'm an athlete, so I'm just not gonna have my period for the remainder of my career. No, get that out of your head, okay? There are sustainable ways for you to get your cycle back. And again, that plays into the energy deficit. So we have to close that gap. And that's not to say that you can't, or you have to stop your sport. You might have to lower the volume, lower the intensity for a short period of time. However, again, the most important thing is increasing the energy input to match your energy output. And that way your body, your hypothalamus, which is kind of like the CEO of your brain that tells your other body parts what to do and when to do them, will feel safe enough to restart your reproductive system again. Number 7, all in does not teach long-term balance. And what I mean by that, so if you do go all in, you eat anything and everything, you quit exercise, what happens when you get your period back? How do you live normal life? Which is why learning how to fuel your body properly along the way will set you up for so much more success later on in not losing your period again, rather than going all in and then you've got all this excess body fat and you're like, oh, I want to have some physique goals, I want to lose some body fat, and then you lose your period again because you don't know how to freaking fuel your body properly and you don't know how to incorporate exercise in appropriate amounts. The balance, the sustainability is just not there. Numero 8. There's a difference between enough and excess. So what I mean by that is there's a difference between eating enough for hormonal support and getting your cycle back, and then eating in excess and just throwing in the towel and going all the way to the other end of the pendulum. Like I mentioned before, I did develop some other disordered ways of eating excess amounts of food just because I was emotional, and then I created this habit where my brain thought that I needed to eat copious amounts of food whenever I was uncomfortable, and that was probably the hardest habit to kick out of this whole experience, was the binge part of it. And it's because it's a little bit more socially acceptable, I think, and you can hide it a bit more, where when you're underweight, people are like, oh, you notice, right? But when you are at a normal, healthy weight and you still struggle with food in a different way, it's harder to be open about it. It's harder to kind of admit even to yourself that you do still struggle. But again, your disordered eating habits, if you don't nail them and heal them at the core, then they will just morph. And you don't want them to morph, you want them to go away entirely. Number 9. The fear of undereating can also become a bit disordered, because I've experienced this and some of my clients have also experienced this. Some women can have this fear of feeling hungry when it's just a regular part of life. At some point you're going to feel hunger, and that's okay. That's a normal thing to feel. You don't have to always have some snack on hand. It's obviously good to prepare, but you don't have to take it to the other side of the extreme, like I mentioned, and you don't have to answer your hunger right here and right now, right? You're an adult human being and you have control, even though you may not feel like you have control right now. But fearing hunger and fearing undereating can also become a bit of a hard thing to manage as well. Number 10, hormonal healing is about adaptation, not extremes. So a lot of the times, and I see this a lot with weight loss too, like this Ozempic thing going on, people want just this magic pill. Here you go, here's your magic pill and everything's gonna be all right. Same thing with us and period recovery. We have this all-in thing where it's just like, okay, do this and you're gonna get your cycle back. But now what? You have your period back. And you're in another extreme, but you don't know how to get yourself out of it. So teaching your body how to go through this process in a balanced way rather than taking drastic measures, in my opinion, is a much more sustainable way to do it. You get to learn more about yourself, you get to learn more about your mindset, more about what you can change of your mindset, and you get to learn resilience, which I think is the biggest gift throughout this whole journey of yours, and also what I found for myself. So if you're currently struggling with your period or period recovery, my application is always linked below. I would love to see if I can help you on a free consult call. My approach is more like Dr. Stacy Sims. If you haven't heard of her, I highly suggest you looking into her. She's on a bunch of different podcasts, but her approach is more of fueling properly, not taking it to extremes, and finding a balanced approach to period recovery while also accommodating female athletes. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment any other videos you want from me. And until next time, my cool cats and kittens, I will catch you in the next one.